It's a great crowd here. I just need to take a picture, so hold on just a second. All right, everybody smile. This is going out to Twitter. Boom. Okay, hold on. Selfie. All right. All right, we're going to share that one. That's going to go to, oh, always have such a hard time with technology here. I click on the blue bird. I put in no, not that one. Oh. See, if I were a millennial, this would all go a lot faster. There it is, pound HOPECIS post. All right, you all are on the Twitterverse, so congratulations. Very excited to have you with us this morning for our digital stories portion of our Critical Issues Symposium. So we're going to have a rapid succession of 6 groups speaking to you about experiences with digital technology and how it's changing their or other people's lives. Our first presenter this morning is our own president of Hope College, John Knapp. John Knapp is the 12th president of Hope College. He's a professor of religion as well as a professor of management. And many of you know he has amassed a significant following in the Twitterverse using the handle @PresKnapp. In fact, he's probably tweeting right now as he walks out onto stage. So please give a warm welcome to John for his presentation on self-deception and scientism, what technology cannot do for you.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to all who helped to plan the program. This has been a terrific program so far. I'll try not to lower the bar in the next few minutes. I'm really just thrilled with the topic. I think it's one that's so timely. In fact, just yesterday morning, our administrative council, completely unrelated to this, was meeting with the Dean's Council, and we were talking about some of the challenges that we have as leaders in the college, and the conversation very quickly turned to technology. And it turned to the question of how do we manage our time when we're constantly dealing with a torrent of emails? And can we turn that off? And what kind of example are we setting for others in the college if we don't turn that off on the weekends, for example, or in the evening? And yet we all feel that we're so tied to technology 24/7 that we really never go home from work. I think that's the experience of a great many people in our society. Well, last evening, a student posed a penetrating question to our speaker, Douglas Rushkoff. Is there room for human ethics? I believe this is a question for all of us amidst the relentless and accelerating advance of technology. And I'd like to reflect with you just briefly as I share a perspective from my own years of work as a professor and consultant in professional ethics with a wide range of organizations. We might begin by acknowledging that consensus about any complex problem in today's society is neither quickly attained nor easily sustained. We struggle to apply established moral principles to fast emerging and fast changing technologies. We find that we're not so good at foreseeing the cause-consequence chain of events that might follow the adoption of new techniques. As technology alters our lives at an unprecedented rate, we scarcely have time to reflect on or even to recognize its ethical implications. I think this is the phenomenon that Professor Rushkoff referred to last evening as present shock, which he defined as the inability to seize time for human purposes. I would argue that there are few human purposes more important than our students' notion of making room for ethics. Without clarity about moral limits and aspirations, technology can be expected to develop unchecked toward whatever ends may be possible. That is, if something can be imagined and produced profitably, it likely will be, regardless of whether it ought to be. And of course, even so-called good technologies often have potential for misuse or unintended consequences. Let's consider a few simple examples close to home. Many colleges and universities are finding that old assumptions about how to protect copyright and intellectual property are inadequate when smartphones are used to record and disseminate lectures or classroom discussions. Similarly, if you're a student, consider how technology has given rise to unprecedented concerns about your own privacy. The cameras at your Friday night party that link instantaneously to social media sites, for example. or those increasingly common overhead drones that may video record you without your knowledge, or the slew of apps or other mobile technologies tracking your movements, your interests, your buying habits, and even your personal health. And then, of course, there are innovations with no redeeming social value, but which make money nonetheless. The latest example being Yik Yak, a social media platform for posting anonymous remarks that often amount to bullying or even lethal threats, as the University of Georgia experienced just this week. Are we confident of our ability to establish an ethical consensus to limit any of these developments? When, in your experience, do we seriously ask questions about the ethics of technology? If it happens at all, it's too often after the fact when undesirable outcomes are already evident. How then can we as individuals, as organizations, or as a society expect to make wise choices about far more consequential developments, such as the advances in artificial intelligence mentioned last evening, or the inevitability of human cloning, or the seemingly inexorable movement toward genetic modification of the human species? My question for us at Hope College is, how well are we preparing future leaders to recognize, analyze, and effectively address the ethical complexity of the technological frontier? Much more is at stake than we might realize. While it's true that we seldom foresee and limit undesirable outcomes, the greatest danger, in my view, is that we so often fall prey to the delusion that the methods of science and technology are sufficient for understanding and solving the greatest problems facing human beings. This is the self-deception of scientism, the beating pulse of modernity in a postmodern world where science and technology have such prestige that we defer to them almost without question. The theologian Reinhold Niebuhr foresaw this 60 years ago when he argued that science and technology have, in his words, gained mankind so many significant victories over the forces of nature and have laid the foundations for the whole accumulation of technical power, yet have been singularly deficient in generating wisdom in human affairs. Not long ago, I was at the Hudson Alpha Institute of Biology or Biotechnology in Huntsville, Alabama. Its science director, Rick Myers, was formerly head of the Human Genome Project at Stanford University, and he said something that struck me as very important for us. He said, "The sciences need the humanities more than ever." Can society deal with the radical possibilities of technological change without drawing on our wisdom traditions that point to truth, beauty, and goodness? Can we possibly think about what it means to be human without posing the questions of theology and philosophy? Again, let me quote Reinhold Niebuhr. "The relation between I and thou is not a scientific but an existential procedure. The turning of the self from itself as the center of life to God and the neighbor is also not scientific. If we fully analyze the characteristically human elements in history, we will not only cease to worship so uncritically at the altar of science, we will be less apologetic for the essence of a religion of history and revelation." In this symposium, we're asking what it means to be human. Surely we've seen that technology does not reveal human nature as it really is, but instead tends to conceal it or distort it. The media critic Neil Postman observed that pre-Enlightenment theologians had developed elaborate insights into the relation of man to God, man to nature, man to man, and man to his tools. Their theology took as a first and last principle that all knowledge and goodness come from God. Consequently, in Postman's words, theology, not technology, provided people with the authorization of what to do or think. Technology, he said, creates its own imperatives and at the same time creates a wide-ranging social system to reinforce its imperatives. Society may be self-deceived by scientism, but Postman reminds us, again in his words, in the end, science and technology cannot provide the answers most of us require. The science God has no answer to the question, why are we here? Pastor and theologian Leslie Newbigin writes that technology and science deliver an ever-growing abundance of things to have and to do beyond all the dreams of earlier ages, but they offer no guidance on the questions of worth. What things are worth doing? What things are worth having? In the 28th chapter of Job, the glowing description of the marvels of human technology is followed by the haunting question, but where shall wisdom be found? My challenge to Hope College is to strive to be a community of moral discourse and moral discernment, to look for every opportunity to hone our abilities to recognize the ethical threads that run through our academic disciplines and daily lives, to tease these threads out of the fabric and examine them together, to consider how our deepest values might be challenged or advanced by the choices we make, to creatively envision the consequences intended and unintended that may result from our actions and our own new ideas, to cultivate a moral imagination that takes into account the interests of all whom our actions may affect, even in some cases, the effects they may have on future generations. Is there room for human ethics? Yes, but only if we make room. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now, President Knapp has to leave to catch an airplane. I think our other speakers will be staying around for questions afterwards. However, if you want to talk with him more about technology and ethics, it's a little known secret. I hope I'm not giving anything away. He lives in that red brick house just on the other side of 10th Street with a big porch. You can find him there and ask him more about technology and ethics. Okay, our next speaker is Ernest Cole. Ernest is Associate Professor of English at Hope College, where he teaches post-colonial literature with an emphasis on Africa, India, and the Caribbean. Working with Hope College students, Ernest has produced a video documentary on amputee camps in Sierra Leone. Please welcome Ernest for his presentation on Reflection, Reformulation, and Re-invention, Digital Storytelling, and the Dignity of Dying.
Thanks, Mark. On the 23rd of March, 1991, Sierra Leoneans were woken up to a strange voice on the BBC. The voice gave the present regime 90 days to abdicate the throne. They called themselves the Revolutionary United Front. They promised to march through the country to the capital and seize power. And they promised all sort of mayhem that would be brought to the country. The president by then of Sierra Leone, the All People's Congress Party, didn't want to create any alarm. So he downplayed the event, the announcement over the BBC as best he could. It was a hoax. It was a lone wolf. It's something that could very easily be contained. But then at the end of the 90 days, true to their word, they attacked in the far east of the country. It was devastating. The soldiers were ill-prepared. They lacked ammunition. It was total massacre and abduction of young women who became sex slaves, eventually giving birth to babies we call rape babies. At the end of the Civil War, after 10 years, we lost over 400,000 people. We have over 6,000 amputees, some double amputees. The true story perhaps will never be told. And so what I'm going to do this morning, I'm going to be talking about death and dying. Sorry. But I'm going to be talking about how, in fact, these stories are being told. Why do we have to tell stories of atrocities? Why do we have to tell these stories? Of what significance? Maybe it's a question of not only what we say, but what we choose to say. Maybe it's a question of how we tell it. Maybe it's a question of how we bring the digital into the traditional way of reporting. And what will the difference be? Whose audience, whose story am I telling? Why do we tell these stories? Maybe storytelling has to do with history. It has to do with remembering. But again, the question here is, why do we choose to remember? If it's so much of an atrocity, why do we choose to remember those stories? If the photos we see, the grisly images of decapitation and amputation we see, why do we choose to record and circulate those stories over the internet? So I'm going to be looking at three paradigms, so to speak. I'm going to be wrestling with three very difficult issues, and I hope to get feedback from the audience. I'll be showing some photos as I go along. Again, I go back to the idea of telling story. Whose story do we tell? Is it the story of the perpetrator, or is it the story of the victim or survivor? What is the role of the storyteller? To reflect, to reformulate, to reinvent? Are our stories the same when we capture them digitally? What's the intended audience? I theorize that perhaps storytelling is about confronting history, and since history hinges on memory, then to tell a story is to remember. But again, in my context of Sierra Leone, in terms of the Civil War, where thousands of people were amputated, the limbs were amputated, something close to dismemberment, to remember is to re-member. Is to bring somebody back into the community. Because when the perpetrator chops off the limb of an amputee, it's not only physical dismemberment, it's also spiritual, it's cultural separation. So perhaps when we tell a story, we allow survivors to become part of the community again. So perhaps then to remember is to remember after a state of dismemberment. And in my view, perhaps that's one of the paradigms we need to work on if we're serious about reconciliation. My topic has to do with the dignity of dying. A Senegalese writer once said, to love Africa, you got to understand Africa first. In my part of the world, to die is to be human. And since death involves the state of the body, then that body is central to the discourse of dignity. In a sense, my body is a signifier of not only how I choose to live my life and the implications of that, but even my dead body is a measure of how well or how badly I choose to live my life. And so when I die, or the kind of death I suffer, is also an indication of not only how well I am being prepared to go into the world of the ancestors, but how well the ancestors are ready to receive me. And so, in fact, when somebody dies in some cultures in Africa, the body can stay home for like 6 months. And all kinds of elaborate funeral arrangements are being made. Because that individual must be prepared to cross over into the world of the ancestors, where the spirit never dies. He or she joins the world of the ancestors and even intervenes in the life of the people. So to die from punitive amputation is a disgrace. To die from punitive amputation is shame, is humiliation. It is perhaps an impediment to how well you've been received in the world of the ancestors. And so we've come up with all kinds of elaborate ways to make sure that the transition is well effected. I'm going to show you some photos. Do you know what these are? These are caskets, coffins. You will never imagine. This, for instance, is a coffin of somebody who is in authority, a leader. And so the lion symbolizes somebody in authority. When somebody in authority dies, then he or she is placed in this kind of casket. For somebody like me, and for many of us in this auditorium, I suspect, this is a pen, a teacher, a fisherman, a photographer. We'll come to a point where the casket reflects the profession of the individual. And for somebody who loves his beer, but again, ultimately, life in Africa is not about the dead or dying. It's also about the living. And as I said, as the body is crucial, the living body as well as the dead body are crucial to existence and what we think of that existence, I'm going to show you some photos from my own country when that body was mutilated and how, in fact, it affects the social or the psychosocial dimensions of society. This is Memuna. She was 5 months old when her limb was amputated by the rebels. It got to a point where the then president of Sierra Leone had to take her to almost every United Nations conference to allow people to see the extent of the atrocity. This is one of the United Nations sessions. Is your diamond worth this? Because we had diamonds. I wish we never had. What should have been a blessing became a curse in my country. So, some women at the conference from Madagascar, Ethiopia, were weeping to see a 5-month-old baby, losing a limb. But time passes and people go. This is Memuna, now in the United States, in New York City. I got this from a Rotary magazine. She's now, of age, transformed into a wonderful woman. And so I begin to ask myself the question, in a situation of war, somebody steps in with a camera or a camcorder, as I've done so many times going back home to record the testimonies of amputees. But at times I say to myself, at what point is the photographer complicit in the atrocity? Maybe it would have made sense for the photographer to intervene and prevent the crime from being committed, rather than recording the crime and putting it on the internet. Is this part of the bystander phenomenon, we say? Is it complicit? When we record and put on the internet these images, atrocious images, is the world any better? Is the world better motivated to act? Of all the photos we saw of Rwanda, are we better motivated to act in moments of civil war? Are we turned off? If we are, then why are we recording grisly images? Why don't we intervene as photographers, as media practitioners? In 2010, I got a grant from Hope College, and I went home after over 10 years. I went into the amputee camps to record stories of amputees. I was there for 3 weeks, listened to all kinds of stories, and stories as fresh as it happened yesterday. I met one amputee I will never forget, Mr. Barry. He lost both hands. He's been assisted to put on his clothes by his son, right here. I had never met him before, but something just sort of connected. We just got connected. Horrible pictures. And I said to him, Mr. Barry, I am not a medical doctor. I cannot give you prosthetics. But here is something I can do. I can contribute to the education of your children. I can see if I can go back to the United States and raise some money to help children of amputees go to school. Perhaps that is what it means to be human, to respond to the call. It's about human agency. It's about human action. It's about helping the needy, helping the vulnerable in moments when there's nothing, no way out for them to survive. I said, Mr. Barry, I had no intention of coming back to the camp after 1 year, but something tells me I'm going to be here next year, and I want you to wait for me. And so I left Sierra Leone, I came back, my chair, by then the chair of the English department, David Cloyster, I said to him, David, you got to help me. These are some of the photos I brought back from the camp. I need money. We got to send these kids to school. I know what education has done for me. I know what education can do for them. And he took me to his church, Hope Church, and we raised money. I want to acknowledge Hope Church. Any member of Hope Church here, God bless you. I want to acknowledge Hope Church. I also want to acknowledge, before I show the last set of photographs, one of my students, particularly Laura Cray, I think she's graduated now, and her dad, Kevin Cray, in the Hope Business Department. So this is what we did. These are all children of amputees. This is Mr. Berry's daughter. I'm going to say a few words quickly before I close. When I went back after 1 year, I was so excited to see Mr. Berry. I ran straight to the amputee camp. I was some distance away, and his wife saw me coming, and she ran to meet me. It was wonderful. We hugged each other, embraced, and I said, "Where is Mr. Berry?" She broke down. She started crying. I said, "What happened?" He said he died 2 months ago. I never got to see Mr. Berry again. But I am grateful that his daughter is part of the project to educate children of amputees. I want to see all of them graduate from high school. And so my conclusion is, yes, it is about the dignity of dying. It is about children of amputees stranded in amputee camps. It's about these grisly images of amputation and decapitation. It's all of these. But perhaps over and above all those is how we respond to the call. Because to act is to be human. And when we choose to act, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest, for your talk, your documentation, the photos, and for making the people real to us. Okay, we're going to continue this morning with Ben Lichtenwalner. Ben is a leading voice on the fruitful intersection of servant leadership, technology, and business. He has recently authored the book Paradigm Flip, Leading People, Teams, and Organizations Beyond the Social Media Revolution. And you can follow him on his top 30 blog at modernservantleader.com. Please welcome Ben for his presentation on technology and the future of leadership.
So I'm sitting across from the chief financial officer of a major organization, and he's going on about the next director he plans to fire. I tune him out pretty quickly as I start doing the math in my head. Let's see, that's 3 directors in as many weeks, and across his entire organization, wait, yep, that's it. His entire organization has now turned over 3 times in 2 years. Everyone in his department has either left or been fired by him because he's got this really bad habit of hiring people, working them to the bone, burning them out, and then firing them less than a year after he hired them. As the chief information officer for the organization, it's my unfortunate responsibility to support his behaviors. And it's really been bothering me. In fact, it's gotten so bad at this point that I have a playlist of songs on my iPad to listen to psych me up and get me energized for the day. So on this particular occasion, I stop and I think to myself, what is leadership? Because what this guy is doing is not leadership. Leaving a wake of bodies in your path is not leadership. Yet he's a chief financial officer of a major organization. So I do. I start reading everything I can find on leadership. I pick up every book, I read every website. I just consume vast amounts of information about leadership. And then one day I come across this term called servant leadership. And it's like a choir of angels sang to me. Okay, maybe there was no choir of angels, but I did recognize a calling at that point. You see, I recognize that servant leadership is authentic leadership. The only reason we need the term servant is because too many people today have confused leadership as an achievement to be reached rather than a commitment to serve. So why weren't more people aware of this? And that I recognized was my calling. So I started a blog on it. I wrote a book about it. I converted that book into digital format, into audio format. I started Twitter accounts, YouTube channels. I did everything I could to get the word out about servant leadership. And then it occurred to me, this concept of servant leadership and the tools that I'm using are perfectly matched. In fact, digital media that everybody was talking about as a marketing tool, a self-promotion tool, a sales tool, grow your net worth tool, they were actually leadership tools. But nobody was talking about them that way. You see, leadership is not easy at all. But digital media today makes leadership easier than ever before. Leadership is not easy, but digital media makes it easier than ever before. Here's why I think that. The first real occurrence of leadership is back in the nomadic era, right? We have basically caveman era, where leadership is largely one way. Small groups. Whoever has the biggest club is the leader. He says you do. He hits you over the head if you don't, and that's essentially what leadership is. Very small groups, maybe a dozen or so people, family units, tribes, and one way. Then we hit the agricultural era, where we started as human beings to bring our food to us. We start to have communities, towns, villages, and leadership structures start to emerge. As a result, a leader is able to send a message out into the community through a leadership structure and reach probably several hundred people at this point. The Apostle Paul lived at this time. Oh, you may know him as Saul, by the way. The Apostle Paul lived during this time, and he realized that digital media that he didn't have, the closest thing he did have was writing letters. So he used what he had available, and he wrote letters, and thank God he did. Lots and lots of letters. He did the best he could to overcome that challenge, that leadership was still largely one way. There was no way to get communication back from the community. Not as a whole. You could still get community feedback by small groups, you could get messages delivered, but the feedback you got was largely subjective, and it was largely interpreted by the individual delivering the message. Next, we hit the printing press, and we make a massive advancement in leadership communications in that the breadth of the reach of the leader grows exponentially. A leader can now reach thousands and thousands of people with exactly the wording they seek to deliver. They write it down, it's printed out, and it goes out into the community. You can reach a large audience for the first time. But it's still one way. Getting that feedback from everybody that you're reaching with your message is nearly impossible. You're going to get subjective feedback interpreted by the messenger. Your communications as a leader are still one way. Then we hit the broadcast era, TV and radio. With TV and radio, you can reach thousands, even millions of people in new formats, much more quickly than ever before, but still one way. You see, the problem here is we've developed polls and surveys, but everything you get is still only an observation of a small group of leaders or a small group of the community. You're not really getting feedback from everybody you're reaching with your message. Until now. Now we have digital media, and in the digital media era, we have the first opportunity to get feedback from the entire organization you are trying to reach. Oh, sure, you might not be getting conversation with one person that is rated, ranked, liked, +1, all the feedback you can think of by the entire organization that wants to be a part of that message. Anyone in this room can send a message out to the world and get feedback from everybody who's interested in that message. And oh, by the way, you can do it completely for free. Leadership is not easy, but digital media makes it easier than ever before. You know, there's a big question probably still hanging in your minds, though, about why should we care, right? So we have this tool, leaders are out there, they can use it, but why should we care about it? Let's take a look at the people who understand this concept. Whether or not they're leaders, certainly whether or not they are servant leaders, there are people out there who are using this opportunity. Up to about 10,000 followers in digital media, we have this group. And again, this is a selective group, obviously, but we have the Apostle Paul I mentioned earlier, right? If he were alive today using digital media to reach about the same number of people he was doing very effectively given the time to reach with his letters, he'd be up to about 10,000 followers at this time. Our own servant leader, President Knapp, who you heard speak earlier, he's up to about 10,000 followers in digital media, and the Reformed Church of America in that same category. Pretty good group. 100,000, our very own Hope College, up to about 100,000 followers. Way to go, Hope. Does anybody recognize the other one up there, though? That's ISIS Media Network. Now, if you're not aware, ISIS is very effective at using social media. They use it both to attract new followers and to scare off organizations as they advance into new territories. ISIS is incredibly effective at social media. They're influencing our communities. Our global communities are being influenced by up to about 100,000 followers right now by ISIS. 1 million. Trinity Broadcasting Network, the largest Christian broadcasting network in the world, has up to about 1 million followers in digital media. Anybody recognize the other one? That's Almanar News, which is essentially Hezbollah's media news outlet. Up to about 1 million digital media followers. They also are affecting our global communities and influencing them through digital media. 20 million digital media followers. Yay, Pope! Pope's a pretty popular guy for all kinds of good reasons, but he's also probably the most effective ever at digital media, right? Now, granted, he probably has a staff helping him out, but he's using it very effectively. Somebody not quite so much like Pope, though, is Charlie Sheen. Paris Hilton. Not people I think of as great role models for the youth of today, but they're also influencing about up to 20 million of our stakeholders in our communities. Then we hit the major leagues, 75 million followers on digital media. I don't know about you guys, but I have to teach my 3-year-old not to stick his tongue out all the time, and then I gotta have Miley Cyrus on the screen all the time. Thanks, Miley. Snoop Dogg, Kim Kardashian. You decide for yourself, are these the type of people we want influencing our communities? Maybe. But if you don't, it's up to you as leaders to start influencing more effectively online. Leadership is not easy. It never will be. But digital media is an opportunity that makes it easier than ever before. Every leader that's come before you would have loved to have had this tool available to them to be more effective leaders. Before I leave today, I want to give you one more story. This is Kirsten Bond. Kirsten works with digital prosthetics, bionic prosthetics. She works with some of the most advanced technology for amputees, upper limb amputees. I asked Kirsten, I said, Kirsten, in your research, in your work with your patients, what is it that makes someone more effective at adapting the new technology, more likely to be successful with the technology? She said, without a doubt, it is someone who is excited about the power and the potential of the technology. That's interesting, Kirsten. I said, what is it that makes it more challenging? What is it that's still difficult for your patients to do, no matter how much time they spend working with the technology? And she said, well, the problem with bionic technology today is it still doesn't provide sensatory feedback. You see, a natural hand has the ability to sense something in it. They know, you know as an individual whether something is being held too tight or too loose and is going to slip through your fingers. But a bionic limb doesn't have that sensory feedback. How much is that like leadership? You see, we have the power and the opportunity before us if you're excited about it. And the sensory feedback problem, we don't have that anymore. We have digital media to give us instantaneous feedback from a global audience on your message. So the next time you're on social media, think about how you are using this opportunity and this potential to leverage stakeholders in our communities and to be a more effective servant leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Ben is teaching a class in the Department of Management on servant leadership and technology, so if you're interested, go check that out and sign up next time that's offered. Okay, our next group, Ryan Backman and Rudy Metellus. Ryan and Rudy are Hope College students, and they recently took on a very unusual challenge, which you're going to hear about this morning. Ryan is a junior in electrical engineering. Rudy is a junior in nursing. Please welcome Ryan and Rudy for their presentation on Unplugged study experiences.
Hi, everyone. So I did the Unplugged study, and I thought it was going to be super easy. I was like, going without technology for 24 hours, I got this. Well, I chose a Sunday. I was like, nothing's really going on Sunday, so I'll be able to do this. I'm not working where I have to use computers or driving somewhere where I want to listen to the radio. And so I did a Sunday, and I was like, I'm going to read like a 500-page book. That should be good for the day. Then I won't have to deal with technology. So I started reading my book at 9 a.m., and then I finished it at 2 p.m. I was like, uh-oh, what do I do now? So that's when I ran into the trouble with technology. Because once I finished reading my book, I didn't want to start reading another book because I wanted to give my brain a break. And usually to do that, I'm a big like Netflix person. So I'm going to watch a show, or I'm going to listen to music, or something like that. And so at 2 p.m., I found myself in my bed, looking around. Well, I can't watch my favorite TV show. I can't listen to music. I can't call anyone to hang out. Like, what do I do? And so I decided to go outside, which was like sunshine, vitamin D, it's good for you. Woo! But then I didn't really want to go outside. I wanted to stay inside. And so I went outside, I went to Collin Park, I walked around, I was like, okay, this is cool. I started thinking I was like a philosopher, I started thinking deep questions about myself, like, how do I feel not using technology, and like, what would I do in this moment if I was using technology? Probably watching a movie or something. And so after I took my walk, I was just like, why do I feel like this? Why do I feel kind of like anxious because I'm not able to connect with people? And I realized that not only do I have an issue not being able to use technology to be connected, but I want to have accessibility to technology. So for me, I felt that what was most important was being able to have access to the internet, or access to my phone to call someone up if I needed them, or just to hang out. And that's where I ran into the most trouble, because if I couldn't access it, I felt I was disconnected from it. And so that's something I really realized about myself during the study, that I really like being able to access technology and be able to use it for my own needs.
So usually I don't have the benefit of getting my own introduction, but I guess I'll just start by saying good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. So my story is a little bit different from Rudy's. After my summer research here at Hope, me and a buddy went on this sort of adventure, I guess, someone in the vein of John Muir would say. I went to a place called Isle Royale National Park, which is in the middle of Lake Superior. It's about 10 miles south of Canada. Totally isolated, very few people there other than rangers, other hikers, and I went on a 4-day backpacking trip, so I was just almost completely separated from any form of technology that would just be recognizable. You'd see boats every now and again, but for the most part, I was just out in the wilderness. So when I was out there, I never really feel a need to use technology. I never really feel separated, at least not with a negative connotation on that word. So, for the most part, my story was kind of uninteresting in that sense, but I did kind of notice when I came back from the island, I got back, I arrived back in a harbor on a ferry, I was standing around waiting for my stuff, got it back, got my phone, and I turned it back on. Got it all fired up. I had it with me just in case I would get lost and I'd still somehow have a cell signal. And I just checked it and started catching up on where I was. And I took a moment to think about that. And I thought, well, that's really strange that I just very intentionally, disconnected from all of this stuff. I got separated from it. And then just all of a sudden, it was back. So I took a moment to think about that, and I realized something very similar to what Rudy was saying. I feel a need to be in the loop, to be kind of connected with whatever is going on, because I always have the sense of it's not really centered on myself. Oh, what's happening with my Facebook? What's happening with this or that? I only really use Facebook. I don't tweet. But so I realized, well, what if somebody needs me? What if somebody needs to contact me, give me some very important information? So I noticed I had this very subtle connection to technology that was very much about, I need to be there, or this, or that, or that, or that. So I just entered this sense of, just this sense of necessary connection, which I found kind of strange. So it really made me reevaluate my relationship with technology from total isolation to literally just being on an island without technology to then being reconnected. So I felt like that was my experience, was very much about, what are my obligations? What am I supposed to be doing? So I realized that technology had created that in me and allowed for that sort of thing to happen where it otherwise might not. So that was what I found pretty interesting. What are you going to say?
So a question for all of you should be, how do you evaluate your relationship with technology? Do you feel the need to always be connected, or is it something more subtle?
Just always evaluate, what is a thing like to you when it's gone? And then, more importantly, what happens when you get it back?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Ryan and Rudy. Okay, before our next speaker comes out, I just need to take a couple moments and answer a few messages, figure out what I'm going to do for lunch. No, just kidding. No, you don't have to leave. We do have another speaker coming. Father Roy Pereira, a Jesuit, teaches chemistry and neuroscience at St. Xavier's College in Mumbai University, India. He is also a faculty member and research guide at the Pontifical Athenaeum in Pune. His research deals with consciousness from both a neuroscience and a quantum perspective. Please welcome Father Roy for his presentation entitled Faith and Technology in Mumbai, India. We're having a technology hiccup.
Hello. No, I am in Holland. I'm not in Mumbai. No, not Holland in Europe. Holland in Michigan, USA. I'll call you later. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear friends. Not Facebook friends, but hope friends. As I was just introduced, Father Roy Pereira, Jesuit priest, and I bring greetings from India, from the city of Mumbai, formerly Bombay, and from St. Xavier's College. I wear a number of hats, and today I will wear the hat of a priest, a Jesuit living and working in the city of Mumbai, where I was born and brought up. In my focus session, this afternoon at Vickers Auditorium, I will wear the hat of someone looking at technology from the eyes of neuroscience, from the heart of a musician, and from the soul of a meditator. And my topic this afternoon is, will technology evolve a new way of thinking? Do I get this on? Yep. So, faith and technology. How do these intersect? What is the balance? Is there a meeting point between each of these? Obviously, some of the things will be specific not only to the city of Mumbai, they could apply elsewhere as well. And so, we have various apps, various websites, and various blogs to pray, to petition, to worship, and many more. The Archdiocese of Mumbai has an app. There's Sacred Space from the Irish Jesuits. Creighton University has an app to pray. And a member of my own province of Bombay, Father Errol Fernandez, has a Jesuit blog. WhatsApp, Viber have all these sort of messages coming to us every day to keep calm, to do this, to do that. And a lot of it is based on faith. I can find a biblical text anywhere. I can choose to do a scripture exegesis online. And for those who are physically or mentally or even visually challenged or hearing challenged, there are apps for them too. Is there an app for confession? Well, not yet. But many people do pick up the phone and call us anytime, day and night, and we are happy to give them a listening ear. But I make sure to tell them, this is not a confession. You need to have time to actually go and meet a priest whenever it's possible. No hurry. And that's not just because it is a Vatican rule, but because there is something different when there is a face-to-face interaction with a human being. So yes, I can listen to a confession on the phone, but it's not the same as the person coming in front of me and speaking. All of us, yesterday's talk, today morning, Gloria Mark again, spoke of the human connection. And I think there is something there to that too. Of course, our sacraments have become all technologized. I now come to Mumbai specifically. We have this famous Mount Mary's Basilica, where the birthday of Mary, 8th of September, is celebrated by millions of people. And not only Catholics, not only Christians, but people of all faiths come there. And we see a lot of people come there and they are busy taking photos, because now it's not only important to go to meet God, but it's also important to go and see the film stars, the movie stars who come there, and it's also important to be seen on Facebook. So how will technology affect the nature of spiritual communities? They will be more networked, informed, and aware. Moving to the Hindu religion, we have the festival of Lord Ganesha, the elephant god. And here also, millions of people come to worship. Now, when I'm talking of millions, Mumbai has a total population of 18 million. So for any festival, you get millions of people coming there. And of course, you can see the guy at the left there. He's taking photos because it has to be, I've been there and I've done that. And of course, here, this famous film actress Priyanka Chopra, photos of her rather than Lord Ganesh. And sometimes the lines at all our temples or churches can get so long that now we have an online app where you can book a darshan. That means book a visit so that you don't have to wait in line. It's like trying to get your US visa. You can book it online, and you can do that for these apps also. Moving to Islam, we have the famous Haji Ali Dargah, where Muslims go for pilgrimage, and you can see the huge lines there. Muslims have also now got an app for when is the exact time to pray, when does the fast begin, when does the fast end. So, faith in Mumbai across all communities is getting technologized. Now, moving from the broad picture and zooming in into a personal narrative, yes, I have also used technology. I can now celebrate the Eucharist anywhere, anytime, because I have my phone, I have all the readings, I have the lectionary, I have the missal. So if I've got my Mass kit, I don't need to carry the huge, heavy books. I can do that anytime. Again, biblical text, I've used it to get devotional prayers online, to say the breviary, and also to reach out to people who need prayers. So I can send out requests, hey guys, please pray for this. And I can receive requests and in turn send it out to my larger spiritual community. So we really have a large praying community. Besides this, there is the combination of using technology and theater. And I've taken the role of Jesus in the Passion Play for the last 2 years, where we used a lot of technology. We were trying to get that video on, but it's a very heavy slide, and it is not possible to get it on. But just to say that the scene, the final crucifixion scene, I was on the cross for 40 minutes, and then I had to sing a full song. And again, with hardly any clothes on, how to get the mic hidden, how to get all that, it was a technological challenge. But here we are able to use technology to spread the gospel, to spread the good news, not only through our apps, but also through traditional means like theater, etc. And of course, going back further, this is, I did the music for this meditation CD, and this is my own collection of songs and compositions. So in a way, a certain technology that helps one to spread the good news, maybe as simple as a CD, maybe as broad as theater. But what is the message that I want to give below all these technologies? And the core of the good news that technology has allowed me to express is, first, every obstacle is an opportunity, if we choose to see it that way. Why? Because believing in a loving God, it cannot be anything but that. God will make a way for us around each and every obstacle that comes our way, but in His time, not determined by us. So, the first point, no obstacle, only opportunity, have hope. The second point, God works all things out for those who believe. There is no such thing as coincidence in the life of a believer. And Alfredo will tell you how it's not a coincidence that I've come here. I prefer to use the word I've coined, spirit incidence. It is the Holy Spirit working in everything that we do. Everything happens for a reason, and there is a reason for anything that happens. So, second point, no coincidence, only spirit incidents, have faith. And the third point, the confirmation of a decision comes only after we have taken that decision. Hence, we have to make that leap of faith, and later on confirmation will come. But remember, God, our loving God, is with us even as we are making the decision, so to speak, in the dark. No confirmation, only God's love. Make that leap of faith. And I'd like to end my digital short story with a composition which brings together the topic of today, faith, and this beautiful college, hope, and ties together my 3 points, hope, faith, and love. Is there something in your life that's not going right? Is there something that you'd like to change? Is there something in your life that makes no sense? Do you feel like just giving up? Are there times in your life, when you've had enough? Are there times the clouds seem all black?
Are there days in your life when there seems no way? Are there nights when life seems a cross? Oh, faith and love's what keeps life moving on. Oh, faith and love, that's what life's all about. Oh, faith and love, my friends, will see us through.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Father Roy. Okay, I'd like to have, we have two more sessions here, so I'd like to have Kalli, Crandell, Victoria Gonda, and Cole Watson go ahead and come on out now. Kalli, Victoria, and Cole are computer science students at Hope College, and you'll notice, well, okay, so we've got two of the three here. You'll notice these cool t-shirts they're wearing. I happen to have one on too. Computer science at Hope College. I don't think I ever introduced myself. I'm Matt DeYoung, a professor in the computer science department. And these students participated in the Hope Software Institute program this summer. They're here to tell us about an Android app that they've developed. Please welcome Victoria and Cole for their presentation on using smartphones to help disabled adults ride the bus. And now Kalli is here as well, and somebody needs a mic. Give them a warm welcome.
Hi, I'm Victoria. This summer we were able to work with a student from Hope College and make him an app to help with some of his needs. He has Williams syndrome, so things like reading through long lists with numbers and estimating and sometimes depth perception can be difficult. This can make transportation hard sometimes. If where he wants to go is within walking distance, that's great, and he can do that. And of course, people can give him rides. But what if he wants to independently go someplace that isn't within walking distance? We worked on creating this app to help with some of that because he had one option where there's the Reservamax through the Makatawa Express that's here in Holland. To use this, you have to call them 24 hours in advance if you want them to give you a ride. But that hinders any sort of spontaneous planning or traveling. It also isn't always very reliable and sometimes won't come pick you up. And it's also a lot more expensive. There's also the fixed routes through the Max bus. This can be difficult though, because in order to plan a trip using it, you have to look through the long list of bus stops and times and find which bus stop is closest to where you're coming from and where you want to go, figure out if they're on the same route and if you need a transfer. After all of this, then you have to figure out what time you need to catch the bus in order to get to where you're going in time, because the bus only comes around to each stop once an hour. So we built this app to help him with that. It helps him to ride the fixed routes and help him with all that planning, and Cole's going to talk more about how we did that.
All right, so obviously, as she talked about a little bit, our goal this summer was to write an app that would work, that would get our client around Holland safely and in an easy manner. But then part of that goal was not just making it work, but making it work specifically for him, because it's one thing to make it work for us, because we made it, so it makes sense to us. But then to have it work for him and fit his special needs, that's something completely different, because he's going to be the one using it and benefiting from it, so we need to make it in a way that is easy to use for him. And so kind of how we started doing this is we would meet every week with him and his helper and his mother, and we would show them what we had made so far during that past week, and then they'd give us instant feedback on, okay, well this works, but I don't know, this doesn't really work for him. It's kind of confusing. And so we got feedback like that every week, And so then we were able to adjust and adapt our app to make it, more friendly for him. And then another aspect that we had to deal with was, in a sense, we kind of had two clients, because we built the app to have it be set up by his helpers or his mom. And what that looks like is there's in settings, they can set up favorite locations of places that he goes a lot, and then set up favorite routes for him. And then there's the interface that he uses to actually make a bus route, and then tell him, then calculate, I want to go here at 2 o'clock or something, and when do I need to leave? And so we had to make an interface that's user-friendly for him, but then also we have to make something that's user-friendly for his helpers that is easy for them to understand to set it up. And so that was an interesting contrast that we had to work with, and again, that was accomplished through meeting with them and just asking questions and getting feedback each week. And then then we also went and tested the app, and we tested it with him. So we gave him what we had, and we just kind of sat back and watched him use it and how he interacted with it. And then that also gave us some insight on what we can change and what we can do better, because we made the app, we understand it and it makes sense to us. But just because it makes sense to us doesn't mean it makes sense to other people, and doesn't mean it's easy to use. And so we went and watched and observed him riding the bus with it, and then we kind of took mental notes and jotted things down and changed the app and adapted it to specific needs like that. And so then Kalli is going to talk more about some of those specific needs and then how he is using it now and kind of the future of the app.
Okay, so the main obstacle that our client faced with this app, not with that, but with the fixed route, was figuring out the bus schedules, because they're very confusing, the different times and all the different routes and whatnot. So the app calculates everything out for him. It just tells him what bus stop to go to, what time to get there. It's super simple, so he can get where he needs to go on time. We added a few features to make it easier for him to understand. A lot of it we made very visual, so there's a lot of icons for him that helps him learn and know what's going on and understand that very easily. All the destinations that he's choosing from are pictures, so if he wants to go to Meyer, he just clicks on the Meyer icon. If he wants to go to Dimnit, he just clicks on the Dimnit Chapel picture, and then it will tell him where to go. So that's super simple for him. Another thing that we try to do is implement a lot of progress bars wherever we could, because the concept of time is something that's a little bit confusing. So we have progress bars that'll tell him that he's halfway to where he needs to be, not necessarily that he's getting there 2:37 or something, because that's confusing for him to understand. So we did a lot with that as well. So now when he wants to go somewhere, it's really easy. If he wants to schedule an appointment for next week, he can put that into his app and set a time for next week, and it'll automatically go in his Google Calendar, which is something that he already uses. So that's really easy. And then it will notify him when he needs to go. So an alarm on his phone will beep and tell him that he needs to get ready to leave, and he can go to his appointment. If he wants to go somewhere right now, if he wants to meet a friend for a movie, he can enter that in, and it'll tell him exactly how to get there as well. So it's something that has given him a lot of independence. Before, he would have been restricted, his spare time, he can only go to anywhere he can walk to, but now he has so many options of different places he can go, he can explore, he can meet friends, go places he's never been before with confidence, so that's just really great. In the future, as of right now, it's just for our client, and we've tried really hard to make it usable for him, and we're still working on maintaining that. But in the future, we hope to maybe make it accessible to other students on campus that we know would benefit from it. So, yeah, that's what we did this summer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, how cool is that? Hope College students building Android apps. Somewhere down on the to-do list, they're going to add a button to watch cute cat videos, but I think that's kind of low on the priority list. Before we go to our last speaker here, I have just an irresistible urge to check my email. No, I'm not going to do that because I now know it will put me in a bad mood. And that explains a lot. So please welcome Gloria Mark back. Gloria's